Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Unstoppable, where we bring you everything GW sports. I'm Sean Grant, and sitting next to me here is my co-anchor Casey Decker. Casey, what have we got in store today?
Well, Sean, it's basketball season, of course, so plenty to discuss there. We'll also wrap up a number of fall sports and look ahead to the new season starting up now. And the head coach of the GW water polo program will be joining Sean here in the studio. It's going to be a good show, so keep watching Unstoppable.
From the School of Media and Public Affairs at the George Washington University, you're watching Unstoppable with Casey Decker and Sean Grant.
As promised, first on the docket today is men's basketball, where the team has gotten off to a bit of a shaky start. Though they started off winning their first 4 games, they played against teams that don't really have the same talent level as they do. And once they moved into games against better teams like Georgia, UAB, and Penn State, they began losing those games. Casey, what's been going wrong for them so far?
Well, the simple answer, the number one answer for me, Sean, is defense. Now, this team has never been a defensively strong team. We did see some good defense from them in the NIT last year, but it's never been a team that's known for defense. But this year in particular, we've really been struggling on the defensive side of the ball. There have been multiple games where we've just given up really easy plays, embarrassing plays sometimes, backdoor plays, alley-oops. And that's just like the dramatic stuff. In general, it just hasn't been a team that's been able to stop other teams' offense.
Well, and when you talk about some of those plays, like those embarrassing backdoor plays, that's help defense, honestly, part of that. And that's something, like you said, we have not seen much help defense. And some of that might be a coaching thing. Some of that might be, you have some of these younger players on the team. They might not have played that much in high school, but certainly they need to learn to play some help defense and not give up some of those embarrassing plays. But, going off of that point too, Casey, freshman struggles, I think, has been something that's really impacted the team so far. Obviously, they've got a very talented young core. They're very talented players, but when you're playing 4 freshmen in a game, you're going to have turnovers, you're going to have chemistry issues, and I think some of that has led to some of their struggles so far too.
And that's something we knew about coming into the season. We were hoping maybe we wouldn't see the effects of it. I think we are. I think another part of this is that they haven't developed the chemistry because I think they haven't really learned how to work with some of the older players. I think there was one interesting moment in the Penn State game where in the end of the first half, it was mostly freshmen on the court, and they had a really interesting dynamic that defensively actually worked. And so I think working with Tyler Kavanaugh and Yuta Watanabe and really learning how to work as a cohesive unit is something that's important. Now, I mentioned Tyler Kavanaugh. I think something that's important to note is that he, of course, has been our offensive leader this year and to some extent last year. I mean, definitely last year. But I think something he needs to do is step it up on defense. I think because he's an offensive leader, he also needs to be a defensive leader, and we haven't really seen that. And there have actually been points where I think he's a liability on the defensive end of the court. And that's something that needs to improve because we can't have that hole there. It needs to be solid all the way through.
Well, and if nothing else, a vocal leader. I mean, Casey, how many years has he been on the team now? You should be calling out those plays, and on defense, if you need help defense, he's got to call it out and say, we need players covering, a backdoor screen, something like that. So even if it's not physical defense, at least vocal leadership and just to kind of rally all the other players, to him. Something else that I wanted to talk about, though, is a lack of a consistent ball handler, and that's something that we talked about before the season even started that might be a struggle for them. I think that Jaron Cena has made some progress as they've worked in a couple of these games, but they really don't have, a ball handler like Joe McDonald from last year who can bring it up, run down the clock, and then still, make a nice play or make a nice pass. Cena's made some nice passes, but I've just seen him when he's brought the ball up the court, he's looked kind of panicked. I know we've talked about that multiple times. It's something that, they've got a couple freshmen that are strong guards, but they're going to have to develop them. That's going to take time. So I see this maybe being an issue that's not going to be resolved for a time.
Another thing is that defenses and opposing coaches know this. Cena is constantly tested, and the team is constantly tested by the full court press. We saw it in some of the very early games, and what I think happened is opposing coaches watched the film and saw that we couldn't break the press. And so every single game that I've watched, at some point, sooner rather than later, and lately it's been sooner, they start putting on the press, and they don't stop because it works. We don't necessarily turn the ball over every time, although we do turn it over, and I've also seen backcourt violations in terms of not getting the ball over half court at all. But we also just don't get it over fast enough to really develop a play. And so that full court press has been killing us all season long. I think having a better ball handling strategy and a better ball handler, seeing Cena improve there, is something we need to do. Another area that we've been struggling is against zone defense. Even against Georgia, a team that's known for, the coach hates zone defense. He loves running man-to-man, but they went to zone and it worked for them too because we simply can't seem to break the zone. We don't have a lot of off-the-ball movement. We have a lot of guys just kind of standing around, and I think that's something where Coach Joseph needs to step up and create playmaking strategies, create plays that will be able to break the zone.
Well, and I think part of that is some of the freshmen that play. Some of the freshmen, again, if these guys were stars in high school, they're used to just, give them the ball and run isolation off of that. And then, so they're not really going to start knowing how to work off the ball movement. And then quickly, one more thing that I wanted to say about this was struggles from outside shooting. We have Matt Hardy's a good shooter, but he's not shooting as much as he should. And I think some of the struggles from outside, that kind of plays into if they're going to break a press and let's say they get a wide open 3 in transition, but they're still struggling from outside. And certainly on set plays or breaking the zone is often a point where you're going to get a solid shot, from outside. But the team certainly has the resources to fix some of these issues. We just really need them to do so before they get into conference play. So hopefully they don't struggle once they start playing some of these conference teams.
Really hope they do that. Now, meanwhile, the women's basketball team is having a better year. Now, they got off to about as rocky a start as you can get. They lost by nearly 20 points in their opener against arch rival Georgetown, but they rebounded in a big way. Since then, they've won 5 out of 6. Their one loss to Syracuse, a team that was ranked number 11 in the country, and they only lost by 3 points in that game. So, Sean, a pretty remarkable start to the season.
And one of the things that when we looked at this going into the season, we said how they were going to be able to transition with a new coach. And sometimes when you have a new coach, you obviously see some struggles right off of the bat as the coach starts to feel out the players, and especially with a team that had so many players left over from last season, how that chemistry is going to work out. But obviously so far it's been pretty smooth. Like you said, other than that first bad loss to Georgetown, they've really picked it up. And a win like that, a loss, even though they lost by only 3 points, that's still a very impressive game for them, given that, this is a high level of competition. I remember, I think we asked a couple of the players, I think in the press conference before the season even started, what game are you looking forward to? And they said Syracuse. And again, even though they lost, I think that bodes well for them that they were able to hang with a team like that for so long.
And I think one of the main reasons they're able to hang like a team with that is because they have a strength that we just talked about the men's team doesn't have, and that's defense. I've been really impressed with how aggressively they play defense. There are a couple players in particular I want to point out. Hannah Shively, she has 14 steals. Now, just for reference, now it is a different sport, but the entire men's starting 5, 18. 14 steals is really impressive. She had one game I remember we watched where she had 5 steals in one game. On the other side, there's also Kyra Washington with 14 blocks. All the opponents combined against GW, in all the games combined, 17 blocks. She is a block machine, and defensively, this is a stellar.
Well, and having a leader like Kyra that's making those plays like that. We talked obviously about Kevin on that, saying he needs to do something like that. Well, Kyra that is doing that as the leader of the women's team and picking ways up, even if it's not as much scoring. We wanted to talk about that they're finding other scoring options. Kyra is not scoring as much maybe as people thought she would have. People thought that she was going to be scoring 20 points a game. Maybe she's not scoring as much as that, but she's picking up the effort in other areas of the court, and 14 blocks like that, just incredible.
And I think a big reason why her numbers might not be that high is because other players have stepped up on the team. There are actually 3 players on the team with more minutes than Kyra, and there are players that are filling key roles. We mentioned Hannah Shively with her steals. She also has 20 or more assists, as does Maylin Bautista. Another thing to note, there's really been one 3-point shooter on the team, and that's Camilla Tapias. She has just really been hitting those threes more than anyone else on the team, at least. And all around, we see that this team's offense is not one that's built on get the ball to Kyra Washington. It's built on let's develop a play, let's get to the basket, let's score.
Well, one of the things, though, I do want to say about, building on those plays is I see they like to use Kelly Prange a lot up on the wing and up on the, the 3-point line. And I could see that maybe if you're going to run a pick and roll or something like that. But I think that Kelly spends too much time staying out by the 3-point line. And obviously she's the tallest player on the team and she could command some real respect in the post. So I think maybe something I'd like to see going forward is them working more plays in where they work Kelly into the post. And I think that would help them as they have some good shooters like you mentioned. And so having more of a post presence, will help them have a complete offense.
Now, another thing that they need to improve on, we've talked about this in our live pre and post game shows many times, is free throws.
Yes.
Now, earlier in the season, they were hovering around 500, which is frankly just
terrible.
That's atrocious.
Yeah.
But they're now up to 622, which is still not great, but it's better. Their opponents, however, are at 712, and generally you want to be 70 to 80% from the line, at least. And they need to improve in that area. Kyra Washington in particular is shooting not even 50% from the line. She has some kind of Shaquille O'Neal things going on there where she's making the block, she's making the points inside. Right. You put her on the line, she has some struggles. So free throw shooting is something we need to step up at.
Well, Casey, they're very clearly a very complete team, and so they should be able to focus on these key points going into conference play, make some adjustments, and then win a bunch more key games going forward. Now, moving over to the field with women's soccer, where the team fought hard until the end, but finished their season with a tough loss. The women's team beat Duquesne in the first round of the Atlantic 10 Championships in a gutty 2-1 double OT match. But the team then went on to lose their next game to Dayton 2-0, finishing out the season 11-7-3. Casey, what were some of the things that we saw in these last couple of games?
Well, look, this is a team that had a lot of potential. From the beginning of the season, we knew that they could be good. We saw really early on they beat nationally ranked Arkansas, but right after that, they lost a big stretch of games. And I think that right there kind of sums up the season for them. Just not very consistent. In my opinion, that comes from relying too heavily on a few key players. Specifically, that's goalkeeper Miranda Horn and lead scorer Mackenzie Cowie. Now, the Dayton game I thought was winnable, but what Dayton did is they pressured those two key players. Miranda Horn was forced to make 6 saves. 2 others got through. When you're shot at that much, you can't stop everything. Right. And Dayton got to her. I think also that the defense just basically stopped Mackenzie Cowie. She didn't get any shots all game. The team as a whole only got 2 shots, and neither of them came from her. Wow. So I think when you rely that heavily on 2 players, that opens you up to weakness.
Well, and building off of that, Casey, 65% of the shots all season came from Cowley and Brittany Cooper. So again, there's 2 players that they're relying very heavily on. And like we're talking about, when you can make it a game plan, you're going to pressure the goalie, just take as many shots as you can, and you're going to come up with a defensive scheme that takes out their best player. That's when you're going to get shut out and you're going to lose games like that. And it's really tough when you rely on so few players. When you need those other players to step up, they're not going to have that experience. They're not going to have that know-how in order to step up and give you the effort that you really need in order to win the game.
I think it is also important to note that these 2 key players, they were key for a reason. They were phenomenal. Miranda Horn has been dominant in the net all season. She's one of the best goalkeepers. I think probably the best goalkeeper in the conference, as we've talked about before. She played very strong throughout most of the game versus Duquesne, only giving up a late goal towards the end of the game, but they still hung on to win that game.
Well, and going off of that with Horn, the team only gave up 2 goals was the most that they gave up in a game all season. They never gave up more than that, so that's a testament to their defense, a testament to Horn. They had a strong season overall, Casey. We really would have liked to have seen them go further in the Atlantic 10 Championship, but they still played their hearts out down the stretch.
Absolutely. Now, kicking it over to men's soccer, where the team finished off a mediocre season with a solid win over St. Louis. The Colonials ended the year 8-5-5 overall, 3-3-2 in conference play. Now, that record was not enough to reach the A10 playoffs. Very disappointing end to the year.
Well, we saw stuff in this last game, which we've seen all season, Casey, and obviously there was an impressive win against a team like SLU, which actually had one of the best regular season Atlantic 10 records in conference, and so it was a strong win for them. But we still have seen what we've seen all season. They played tough defense throughout the game. That's been kind of a staple for them, but their offense has not, been generating enough for them to win some of these games. Obviously, it did so in this game, but overall, we talked about through their disappointing season. Garrett Hine would provide whatever support he could, and he had some great goals, great moments throughout the season, but they just needed a more holistic effort on offense.
I agree. I think the key problem this season for them in terms of winning games, in terms of converting ties to wins, was just getting the ball in the net.
Right.
In 4 of their 5 losses, they were held completely scoreless, and that included 3 games down the stretch. They lost 1-0. When you don't score any goals, you give absolutely no room for your defense to help you.
Right.
And that's just a factor of sports. You got to score to win games.
Right. Well, something that we should look at, though, is they never lost at home during the season. They were 4-0-4 when they were at home, while they were 4-5-1 on the road. So they clearly had some road struggles too. I don't know if that played into part of their offensive scheme. But that's just also something of note.
And I want to point out some positive things. We've talked about Garrett Hine all year, and that's for good reason. He recently won the A10 Midfielder of the Year award. Another award from GW was defender Toby Adewole. He was named to second team All-Conference. So this team will be losing some key seniors like Garrett Hine, but they also have a number of lower classmen who contribute significantly this year. And for me, I think what this team needs to do is they need to regroup, they need to diagnose what went wrong this year, fix it, and then come back next year and make those A10 playoffs.
Definitely agree with that,
So
Casey.
now we're going to go to a short commercial break, but stay tuned for more of our roundup.
Welcome back to Unstoppable. Now, moving on to men's water polo, where the team played incredibly well down the stretch, as they finished second at the MAWPC Championship and finished their season with a 15-11 record overall and an 8-2 record in conference. In the MAWPC Championship, the men won their first game against Mercyhurst by a wide margin of 17-6, and then went on to beat Johns Hopkins 12-10. They could not keep the mojo going in the championship game, however, as they lost to 12th-ranked Bucknell 11-5. Still, a very impressive season for the men's team, and with such a young core, we should expect great things moving forward. I will have a chance to sit down later in the show with Adam Foley, the head coach for the men's water polo team, so stay tuned for that.
I'm really excited to hear from him, Sean. They've had a great season. I still think they're one of the best programs on campus, so it'd be great to hear from the guy who's running it all. Yeah. Now, staying in the pool, but moving over to women's swimming and diving. Since our last show, this group has had 2 meets. In the first, they absolutely dominated Howard at home. The second was the Magnus Cup Invitational in Cleveland, where they placed 6 out of 14. At the Howard meet, sophomore diver Miranda Simon scored a career-high 291.4 on the 3-meter boards. That score was high enough to qualify her for the NCAA Zones, a sort of preliminary competition for the NCAA championships in diving. Freshman swimmer Jackie Torres continues to perform as well. In Cleveland, she clocked the second-best time in GW program history for the 200 butterfly. And now, our own Danny Gill got to sit down with members of the swimming and diving team.
Hey guys, Daniel Gill here reporting for GWTV Unstoppable. We're here at the Smith Center on a Saturday morning with the women's swimming and diving team, and they'll be competing against Richmond, a tough competitor. And we'll also be talking to Miranda Simon, a sophomore from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who recently won Colonial of the Week back in late October for getting a personal best. So we're going to check in with her in a second.
I'm really happy with how we did. Richmond's a really, really tough competitor. They win conference like almost every single year. But I think the team really fought through it, and we're all like super sore. It's like the peak of our season, and we're all just like trying to do the best we can, and then we'll do even better at conference. I kind of just like to think that I'm in practice, and I do best when I just pretend like it's another practice. And I before I get on the board, I like to drill my dives a little bit, and then I get on the board and I think about it for a second, and I tell myself I can do it, and then I go. The team is super supportive. Every single time you get on the board, they scream and shout, and it's really exciting to know that your whole team wants you to do as best as you can. I love them, and I can't wait to see how we do.
All right, thank you so much, Miranda. Have a good one. Again, this is Daniel Gill reporting here for GWTV Unstoppable. Thanks, guys. Back to you, Sean and Casey.
Thanks, Danny. Now, moving on to men's squash, where the team has started off their season a bit slow. They won their first match against Georgetown pretty handily in an 8-1 victory, but then went on to lose their next 2 matches against Princeton and Penn, losing those games 8-1 and 9-0 respectively. Clearly they were outmatched in those games, but they greatly underperformed, and they'll need to turn things around going forward once they get into conference games in the season. Now, our own Colleen Fitzgerald got to sit down with Omar Musel of the squash team.
Hi, I'm Colleen Fitzgerald reporting for GWTV Unstoppable. I'm here at the Learner Health and Wellness Center on the squash courts, and we'll be speaking to junior Omar Musel about how he's doing so far this season.
Our biggest match this year, I'd say, is Navy on January 18th. You guys should all come out for that. We just have a big rivalry with them, and over the past couple of years, we've won, but it's always been tight. Georgetown is normally the first match we play during the beginning of the year, so I mean, they're a club team, so they're not playing every single day, so we won every match, which was pretty cool. Steady improvement throughout the season, especially in the beginning, see what I'm not doing as well as I could, and just striving to work harder and just being better, and especially just being a positive impact on the team, and just being good energy, good charisma, have a good time.
Hopefully they'll take that momentum from Georgetown and bring that to future games. Again, this is Colleen Fitzgerald reporting for GWTV Unstoppable. Sean and Casey, back to you.
Thanks, Colleen. We're going to go to another commercial break now, and when we come back, we'll finish our roundup, and Sean will get to sit down with the coach of men's water polo, Adam Foley. Stay tuned.
Great journalism matters because it's critical to a democracy that the public is informed and engaged and involved. And that happens by having credible information. And so the most important thing, whatever the delivery platform, whatever the technology, whatever the business model, is that the information itself is coming in solid and important ways and is being conveyed in compelling ways because there's so much noise and competition out there. And so that's what I really want our students to be able to do. Be brilliant storytellers, keen observers, and compelling communicators.
Welcome back to Unstoppable. Now, jumping back into the pool with men's swimming and diving, where the team has been swimming well lately. They placed third out of 9 teams at the Magnus Cup Invitational in Cleveland, Ohio, to finish out their docket of fall meets. The biggest wins for the Colonials were in the 1-meter event, which was won by Jake Ortiz on the second day of the 3-day Invitational, and the 1-mile event, which was won by Sean Lemery on the last day of the Invitational. Hopefully this strong showing for the men's team can give them some momentum heading into their winter meets.
Can't argue with you there, Sean. Now going back outdoors to men's cross country. Despite a handful of solid showings in the regular season, this team did not do well in the postseason. They placed a disappointing 10th out of 14 in the A10 championships and 17th of 22 in the NCAA Mid-Atlantic Regional. The highest finisher in the A10s was Ryan DePinto at 27th. At regionals, it was Seamus Roddy with 61st place. The team was up and down all year, and this was really not the way they were hoping to end the fall outdoor season. Now, our own Rudy Venkatasen got to sit down with Ryan DePinto of the men's team.
GW men's cross country is one of 24 D1 sports the university has to offer. While the team didn't do as well as they had hoped this past season, a few of their individuals did find success. I had a chance to talk to junior Ryan DePinto on his past season and his hopes for the team in the future.
So thank you for being with us here today, Ryan. You've had a great season so far. Consistently, you've placed above all of your other teammates. Do you take on a leadership position because of this in hopes that they may follow suit and do as you do?
I'm not much of like a vocal leader, but I like to think that I lead by example. So if guys see me putting in the time and me seeing the results from that by placing well at other meets, they're going to start doing that, and that'll just take over the culture.
So you've found so much success in the past. In fact, in high school, you placed first in your 1,600-meter New York State Championship race. What do you attribute your success to then and now and just overall?
Yeah, definitely. In high school, I had some success, but it was definitely up and down. But I feel like when I was consistent and I just added in extra drills, especially for me, I'm just someone who kind of like gets injured pretty frequently. So when I do extra stuff to keep me healthy and I'm consistent, that's where I start seeing success.
So Ryan, can you run through a typical day's practice for us?
Let's say we have 7:30 practice. We'll go to the Aux Gym in Smith. We'll stretch out, and then from there we'll do some like dynamic drills before we jog up to the track, which is like about 2.5 miles. So we'll jog up there, and then from there we'll probably do some more drills before we get into our workout.
So the team didn't do as well as they had hoped this fall. Where do you see the cross-country heading come next fall, and how do you think that they can improve?
I think we just got to keep building on what we have. I think our training's been really well. We just kind of need to stay relaxed in our races and kind of just follow the game plan that we have beforehand, making sure we don't go out too hard or go out too slow. Just do what our coach says.
Well, we certainly look forward to seeing more from the team and DePinto in the future. For Unstoppable, I'm Rudy Venkatasen.
Thanks, Rudy. Well, hopefully the men can have a better showing in the indoor track season, which begins on January 14th. Now, finishing up the roundup with women's cross country, where the women finished out the season on a high note, placing 15th out of 28 teams at the NCAA Mid-Atlantic Regional Competition. While the team could have performed better, this was still a decently strong showing, as it was the highest that the program has ever finished, and therefore the first time that they earned all-region honors. The team was led by Miranda DiBiasio, who posted her 5th top finish of the season. After this strong meet, let's hope the women are able to carry the momentum going into the indoor track season.
After the break, Sean will get the chance to sit down with Adam Foley, the head coach for the men's water polo team. Stay with us.
Raise high. This isn't just our battle cry. It's our call, our challenge. Because when you are called to Washington, you are called to higher expectations, to a higher standard. We are called here to advance knowledge, to serve society, to change the world. This is the George Washington University, and what we make is history. So stand up, be bold, take risks, press on, push harder, raise high.
Over the fall semester, GW student-athletes have participated in over 4,800 hours of community service throughout the D.C. metro area. In a competition organized by Helper Helper, GW has completed more service hours than any other NCAA Division I or Division II institution. We are now in our final week. Follow GW Sports and Helper app on Twitter to see the final rankings.
Welcome back to Unstoppable. Adam Foley has been able to work great change for the GW men's water polo team since being named head coach back in the spring of 2015. Though his first season at the helm was a tough one, given that the team went 8-22, Coach Foley and his boys have bounced back in spectacular fashion this season. This year, Coach Foley led the team to a 15-11 record overall and an 8-2 record in conference, and a second-place finish at the MAWPC Championship. He joins me here now. Coach, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So if I could start off by asking, what were some of your goals heading into the season?
I'll be honest with you, our main goal was to win a conference championship. That was something we'd never done before, and we were trying to turn the program around, 180 degrees and do something completely different, and we had very lofty expectations, and that was what we were aiming for. I think it was still successful, even though we didn't achieve that goal, but we're always going to set high standards of this program.
What kind of progress do you think you'll make next season, given that you have such a young, talented core of players?
Yeah, we played, 9 significant field players. Of those 9, most of them, we only had one senior. So everyone was freshman, sophomore, a couple juniors in the mix there. Our goalkeepers are sophomores. A lot of our significant field players are freshmen and sophomores. So I really feel like though I'm kind of bummed out about not winning a conference championship, getting to the big stage, getting the experience of playing for a conference championship is invaluable.
What's the greatest area you think you need to improve on going into next season?
That's a good question. I think that we need to sort out some things tactically a little bit, and just kind of build some depth, in particular perimeter shooting. And we got to find a way to kind of sort some things out defensively. Obviously, we're graduating. The one senior we do graduate was a great defensive player in Bogdan. And so, we're not going to replace him one person for one person. Everyone's going to have to kind of change their role a little bit to replace him. So developing, our center defense and developing how we're going to adjust defensively is going to be a big thing for us in the offseason.
Okay. Now, after playing Bucknell 3 times this season, and obviously the tough loss right there at the end, do you think there's some kind of budding rivalry between you two guys?
Oh, definitely. I think that we're, I hope that we're going to be the 2 strongest teams in the conference for years to come. Their coach and I have a long history, good history actually. We get along very well. But you always want to beat your friends, and so we're always going to be getting after each other pretty intensely. We're going to play each other at home and away every year, and hopefully meet in the conference final every year. So we'll see how it goes.
Now, quickly, Attica and Destechi, obviously a very talented player, but what's it like kind of coaching a player like that who, when they come into the program, they already have a tremendous level of skill, but what's it like trying to work with him and then develop those few things that they do need to work on?
Well, with Atakan, really the thing is he's got a great wealth of experience on the international level and playing at very high levels. But the game is different coming from Europe to the NCAA game. So just kind of the style is different. There's some other things, rules that are slightly different. So just adjusting his game, I think that he's just kind of touching the surface of what he could do. I think the NCAA game allows for more creativity than the international game. I think he's used to kind of playing in a certain box, and I think he can now kind of blossom out of that a little bit more. And just making some adjustments to how the game's called in terms of the referees, in terms of stylistically, just kind of ushering him through that process. But with players like Atakan, it's you just have to highlight them.
Right.
You have to make sure that you're putting him in a position to succeed. Yeah. And so that's kind of our goal, this year and moving forward.
Yeah. So other than Destechi, who else do you think is going to make the biggest jump next season? Excuse me.
From that freshman class or in general?
Just in general.
Oh, that's a good. I think all of our freshmen can take a jump. I think some of our sophomores are ready too. I think they progressed, and I think it was still another jump from what they experienced last year. Like you said, we had our fair amount of losses last year, so they had a lot of experience kind of going through adversity. Now, it's how do you deal with the success, and I think for some of them, it's trying to figure out a smaller role, but yet still being successful in that role. So a lot of our sophomores, a lot of our freshmen, Andrew Mavis is a center, from Princeton, New Jersey, who's really good. He had a huge impact, but he's going to have an even bigger impact once he gets used to the college game. Center is a position where the big guys in the pool play, and so there's just going to be a difference being an 18-year-old to a 19 and 20-year-old at that position. Other freshman Jordan Blosser will probably try to step in and play for take over Bogdan's role a little bit. That center defender. Jack Corwin's the sophomore, going to probably step in and play some solid center defender. So we have a lot of freshmen and sophomores that could probably step up and change their role, and that's the great thing about the year-to-year changeover in the roster. Even though we lose one person, next year's team could be totally different because people could get bigger, stronger, faster, improve their game. So we could be a totally different team for the better.
Wow, and then finally, one last question. What was the most rewarding part of the season for you?
Oh, that's a good question as well. I think probably I would have to discount the obviously the conference championship because we didn't win, so that wasn't necessarily the biggest reward. But I think probably one of the biggest reward was probably beating Bucknell at Bucknell. That was a great win. To do it, we were down by 1 under a minute left to win in regulation in the fashion that we did, get a great defensive stop and throw a full court pass. Was a great experience, and to beat a top 10 ranked team. They were 9 at the time, so that was the biggest win in program history. And to do it on the road, against that road crowd was pretty fun.
Well, Coach, obviously lots of great things to expect going forward. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you.
We're going to go to a short commercial break now, but stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Unstoppable. Now, our own Andy Weber joins us here at the desk to tell us which games you cannot miss in the coming weeks. Andy?
Thanks, Casey. The semester may almost be over, but there are still a few basketball games that Colonials need to see. Women's basketball travels up Mass Ave to American on December 7th to play the Eagles at 7 p.m. They play again at home on the 21st against Stanford. The men take on the Howard Bisons on the 10th at 4 p.m. at the Smith Center, and our crew will be there for live pregame and postgame coverage. Guys?
Thanks for that, Andy. Well, folks, that's all we have for you today. As always, make sure to like GWTV on Facebook and follow the show on Twitter at GWTV Unstoppable. For all the Unstoppable crew, we'll see you next time.